The scorching sun climbs slowly over Khartoum, the bustling capital of Sudan, on a Sunday morning, August 17 th, 2025. By 6 heures du matin, the it is already stifling, casting long, fiery orange hue across the terracotta building and dusty streets of this African metropolis where ancient tradition intertwine with burgeoning modernity. In the Al Safa district, north of the city, a small, weathered red brick church stand discreetly, nestled between residential block and a handful of shops just beginning to roll up their metallic shutter. Inside, Father Michel Dubois, a 52-year-old man with close cropped, graying hair and a fast tan by 15 arduous years under the African sun, awaken in his sparse room adjacent to the church. The white walls are bare, save for a carved wooden crucifix and a yellowed photograph of his mother, who passed away 5 years prior, her farewell lost to the distance and his unwavering commitment to his mission. HIS un mâtre reste on a simple metal frame that grow a weary protest with every movement. Slowly, et sit on the edge of the bed, his knees cracking a complaint. The years spent in this land have etched themselves into his body and his spirit. A ruby size, gazing through the small, grilled window that overlook the church's inner courtyard. A fry fig tree struggled to grow there, a silent symbol of the tenacity required to endure in this challenging environment. Even before rising, he perform his morning ritual, a silent prayer, unclasped, head bowed. HIS lips move without a sound, reciting word etched into his soul, known by at since his ordination 28 years ago in Lyon, in a majestic cathedral that now feel like a lifetime away, belonging to another world entirely. Lord, he finally whisper a Lou, his voice raspy with sleep and emotion, grant me strength for another day. Protect those he serve, and help me be an instrument of your peace. He rises with a slight wince and shuffle towards the small, cracked basin in the corner of his room. The water from the tap is lukewarm and finely brownish, but HIS long grown accustomed to it. He splash his face, feeling the familiar liquid run over his dreaded beard, which he decided not to shave today. In the peeling mirror above the basin, he observe his reflection with a key sadness. The lines around his eyes have deepened in recent years. HIS blue eyes, once sparkling with youthful enthusiasm and hope, now carry the weight of countless disappointment, broken promise from local authority, humanitarian project aborted for lack of funding, and the face of parishioners et HIS sin départ or succumb to illness. Yet, deep within those teared eyes, a small flame still flickers the unyielding conviction that his work hold profound meaning. Et don his black cassock, adjusting the white Roman collar with automatic gesture on head over 2 ans of repetition. The fabric is worn, patched in several places by Amira, the parish's charity coordinator, who possess a remarkable talent for mending. He had refused a new one, preferring the funds to go toward feeding family in dire need. Stepping out of his room, he walks down a narrow corridor leading to the sacristy. The walls are a poignant chronicle, adorned with yellowed photograph, baptism, wedding, first communion, smiling face frozen in time. They are silent witness to the years spent building this small Christian community in a predominant Muslim land. Some of these faces belong to people forced to flee the country, others to those who have since passed away. Each photograph tells a story, a joy, a sorrow, a life touched by this humble church. In the sacristy, he methodically prepares the sacred object for mass, the tarnished silver chalice, a gift from a French benefactor a decade ago, the communion wafer he meticulously prepared himself the preview day with flour and water, upholding strict tradition, the altar wine, imported at great expense from Egypt. Every gesture is precise, rare, imbued with profound significance. It is then that his gaze falls upon a white envelope, slipped discreetly under the sacristy door. HIS at says. This isn't the first time this week. He bend down, a slight grunt escaping him, and pick it up, his finger trembling almost imperceptibly. He tears it open, unfolding the single sheet of paper inside. The message is written in Arabic, in an elegant script, but est on is unmistakably menacing, infidèle, your time here is numbered. You corrupt or Bertrand with your lies. Live now or face the consequence. This is your final warning. Judgment approach. Father Michel reads the message twice, then a third time. HIS en now tremble incontrôlably. It's not the fear of death that shakes him, but the agonizing thought of living is vulnerable community shepherdless, unprotected. Et 5 Sevilly onto the wooden chair near the preparation altar and close his eyes. A torrent of memory flood his mind, his arrival in Sudan in 2010, full of idealism and dream of building bridge between faith, the difficult early years, learning Arabic, adapting to the scorching climate, the unfamiliar food, the vastly different custom. Then, the first success, a dispensary opened in a poor neighborhood, literacy class for women, a vital food aid program. But with success came complication, administrative hurdle, veiled threats, escalating tension, the gradual departure of Western expatriate after the political upheaval of 2019 and 2023. Et thanks of his family in France, his sister Martine, who has pleaded for years for him to return, to take a key parish in the French countryside, his nephews and niece, known only through sporadic email and faded photograph. His brother Antoine, who ceased speaking to him after he missed their mother's funeral, detint hereby en urgent humanitarian crisis. A creaking sound break his reverie, the church door opening on rusty hinge, et showing on the stone floor. He quickly rises, crumple the menacing message, and shove it into his pocket. He must not betray any weakness, any fear, before his faithful. It is Amira who enters the sacristy. 28-year-old Sudanese Christian woman has become his indispensable right hand over the years. Tall and slender, wearing a lighted scarf over her dark hair in deference to local custom, she possesses an intelligent face and hazel eyes that seem to constantly evaluate, understand, and anticipate. She carry a canvas bag filled with fresh market flowers, destined to adorn the altar. Bonjour, Père Michel, she says in Arabic, before switching seamlessly to French. You seem preoccupé this morning. The priest forced a smile. Bonjour, Amira. No, all is well. Just a little tired. She looked at him insistently, placing her bag on the table. Father, I've known you for 7 years now. I know when something is wrong. Is it the treats again? He hesitated, then slowly retrieved the crumpled paper from his pocket and handed it to her. She read it, her face darkening progressively. When she looked up, her eyes gleamed with unshed tears and a flicker of anger. We must go to the police. Now. This is the 5th threat in 2 weeks. Father Michel shook his head slowly. The police, Amira. We both know they will do nothing. At best, they will take a deposition and forget it in a draway. At worst, it will only draw more attention to us and make things harder for the entire community. So what? You will simply wait for them to carry out their threat? He approached her, placing a gentle but firm hand on her shoulder. My dear Amira, I have dedicated my life to serving here. If you were to leave because of some coward sending anonymous message, then you would have abandoned everything that truly matters to me, the orphan at the head center, the sick we visit weekly, the family who rely on our food program. No, he will not leave. Not alone I can still be useful. Your courage is admirable, Father, but your death will serve no one, she retorted with rare vehemence. Before he can respond, other voices filter in from the church. The faithful are beginning to arrive for the 9h du matin mass. Amira quickly wiped her eyes and picked up her bag of flowers. This conversation is not over, she says, exiting the sacristy. Father Michel remained alone for a moment longer, watching the downlight, now brilliant, stream through the church's colored stained glass windows. Ray of red, blue, and gold dance on the white walls, creating ephemeral pattern of poignant beauty. He takes a deep breath and murmure one last prayer before donning his violet stole. Your will be done, Lord, not mine, but your. But before we witness the pivotal moment that will forever alter this day, ensure you resubscribed and have that notification bell to not miss any part of this incredible story. By 8h55 du matin, the church is nearly full. Around 50 people are present, seated on simple wooden bench arranged in row on either side of the central aisle. The assembly is diverse, Sudanese Christian family, some tracing their face back generation in this minority community, a few Western expatriates working for international NGOs, and even 2 or 3 Coptic Egyptians, passing through Khartoum on business. The ceiling fan shone slowly, steering the warm air without truly cooling it. The monotone of their electric motors create a constant backdrop, mingling with the murmur of conversation, the occasional cry of a baby, and the rustle of clothing. The scent of frankincense, blended with dust and human perspiration, create a unique atmosphere, familiar and comforting to those accustomed to it. Amira busy herself with the final preparation, meticulously arranging flowers on the altar. White and red rose, a few carnations, sprig of green foliage. Her movements are precise, almost ritualistic, and are she learned from a French nun who once ministered this parish before returning to Europe for health reasons. In the back of the church, near the entrance, a group of young people chat in low voices. Among them is Karim, 18, the son of a local Christian family. Tall and lanky, with curly hair and an easy smile, a dream of becoming an engineer and received assistance from Father Michel to secure a scholarship. Busy Mrs. Sister Sarah, 16, who regularly assist Amira in the parish's charitable activity. He heard there were more treats, Karim whispered to Sarah, his voice hushed. Where did you hear that? She asks, her brow furrowed with concern. Mom was talking to Dad last night. I thought he was asleep, do you hear them? Karim shifted nervously. Dad wants us to stop coming to church for a while. Sarah pressed her lips together, her face hardening with a quiet determination much like Father Michel's own. Father Michel stayed here for all of us. We cannot abandon him now. Their conversation is abruptly cut short by the entrance of three men whom no one recognizes. They are dressed simply in dark trousers and long-sleeved shirts, despite the heat. The first, in his 30s, bears a visible scar on his left cheek, likely from an old burn. The other two, slightly younger, possess hard gaze and tight jaws. They don't sit, but remain standing by the back wall, arms crossed, their presence a sudden chill in the air. Amira noticed them immediately. Her instinct, sharpened by years of navigating Khartoum's complex and sometimes dangerous environment, screamed that something is wrong. These men have not come too pray. Discreetly, she pulled out her mobile phone and sent a rapid text message to her brother Youssef, who works as a security guard in a government building a few kilometers away. The message is simple: stranger at church. Suspicious behavior. The church bell began to toll, their metallic, slightly discordant sound echoing through the neighborhood. It's a familiar call that Muslim neighbors have learned to tolerate over the years, some with benevolence, others with un level d'irritation. Father Michel enters the nave from the sacristies side door, now vested in a white chasuble embroidered with gold thread, a gift from a French sister parish that financially support their mission. The faithful rise a one, a collective rustle of clothing and scrap of chair. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, et began in French, before repeating it in Arabic for those who do not understand the language of Molière. Amen, the assembly respond, a collective but une vaine voice. The mass commence according to the millennial ritual. Biblical reading are proclaimed, first in Arabic by a local reader, then summarized in French for the expatriate. The Gospel of the Day speak of perseverance, of faith in adversity. The passage is from Matthew, blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for there is the kingdom of heaven. Father Michel listened intently, an involuntary shiver running down his spine. This reading was not chosen by chance, it is simply the liturgical calendar, yet the coincidence feels almost prophetic to him. When it is time for the homily, he slowly ascends the 3 steps leading to the small, carved wooden pulpit. He surveys the congregation, his gaze briefly resting on familiar face, Madame Thérèse, 80 years old, who hasn't missed a mass since his arrival, Dr. Antoine, an Egyptian doctor who runs the small dispensary supported by the parish, family with their children, the young, the elderly. And in the back, those 3 unknown men, immobile as statue, their eyes fixed on him with a disturbing intensity. My brothers and sisters, et began, his voice, too amplified, resonating with profound conviction. Today's gospel speaks to us of perseverance in faith. A pause, carefully choosing his next word. In our context here, in Sudan, this word take on a particular significance. We live in a world where it is sometimes difficult to remain faithful to our conviction. The pressure are numerous, the temptation to give up, to take the easy pass, to succumb to fear. But the gospel remains us that true faith is not one that exists only when all is well. True faith reveals itself in adversity. His voice well, charged with content emotion. He will not lie to you, these past few weeks have been difficult. There have been threats, intimidation, attempt to frighten us, to make us leave. But I am still here. We are still here because our faith is stronger than any threat. A murmure ripple through the assembly. Some know in approval, other exchange anxious glance. Amira, seated in the front row, clasped her tightly on her lap, her face tense. Faith is not the absence of fear, Father Michel continue, his voice now almost vibrating. It is the courage to continue despite fear. It is the conscious choice of love when hatred seems easy. It is refusing to let the darkness extinguish your light. The three men in the back of the church exchange quick glance. The man with the scar give a slight nod to his companion. Their posture stiffened imperceptibly. Our community has survived so many trials over the decade, the priest résumé. Wars, famine, political change, persecution. Each time, we were told we would not survive. Each time, we proved that faith, when authentic and rooted in love, is indestructible. He descend from the pulpit and move closer to the assembly, his tone becoming more intimate, almost conversational. He wants you to understand something important. We are not here to conquer or dominate. We are not here to impose our belief on those who think differently. We are here to bear witness to God's love through our concrete action, feeding the hungry, caring for the sick, educating children, offering hope to the desperate. This is our mission. This is our vocation. The assembly on is every word. Even the usually restless children seem captivated by this profound declaration. And if some do not understand this, if some interpret our love as threat, then we must pray for them. We must show them by our example that we are not their enemy, but their brothers and sisters in humanity. It is at this precise moment that one of the three men in the back takes a step forward, then another. The sound of his footsteps echo in the church's attentive silence. A few head turn. Father Michel stopped mid-sentence, his gaze following the man who slowly advanced down the central aisle. Amira abruptly rises from her bench, her instinct screaming that something terrible is about to happen. Karim and Sarah, at the back, instinctively recoil towards the door. The scared man is now halfway down the aisle. His two companions begin to move too, separating to block the side exit. Their movements are coordinated, practiced. These are not amateurs. Enough of these lies, the scared man suddenly shouts in Arabic, his voice explosive in the church's stunned silence. Panic instantly says the assembly. Scream erupt. Women grab their children. Men rise, uncertain whether to flee or intervenir. In mere second, chaos replace the peaceful atmosphere of religious celebration. If this unfolding tragedy has gripped your heart, please hit that like button to show your support. The three men move with military efficiency. In a matter of seconds, they have reached the altar. The scared man violently grabs Father Michel by the arm, his finger digging painfully into the flesh through the chasuble fabric. You've had enough warning, infidel et growl, his hot breath smelling of coffee and tobacco. Father Michel does not resist. His face remains eerily calm despite the evident terror in his eyes. He raises his free in a gesture of peace, of submission. Please, he says, his voice trembling but firm in Arabic, do not harm these people. They have done nothing wrong. If you have a problem with me, take me, but leave them in peace. That is exactly what we are going to do, the man replied with a cruel smirk. Amira rushed forward, attempting to intervene. Let him go. You have no right. One of the other two men, a burly figure with a dark beard, roughish over acid. She stumbles on the edge of a bench and falls heavily onto the stone floor. A sharp crack echo her shoulder hits the ground. She cries out in pain, clutching her bruised arm. Amira. Father Michel shoots, struggling to free himself to help her. But the scared man's grip is iron. He violently yanks the priest backward, forcing him down the altar step. Father Michel stumble, nearly falling, but felt upright by the brutal force pulling him. The third man, the youngest, pulled a knife from his belt. The blade gleamed under the morning light filtering through the stained glass. He brandished it theatrically in the air. No one move, he ordered, his voice surprisingly high-pitched for someone trying to appear menacing. No one tried to follow us or call the police, or there will be blood today. The terrified congregant freeze. Some weep silently, others pray under their breath. Children sob, clinging tightly to their parents. Doctor Antoine, a doctor accustomed to emergency, quickly bent down to examine Amira, shaking that her injury is no worse than a dislocated or sprained shoulder. The abductor dragged Father Michel through the central aisle. With each step, the priest tried to maintain eye contact with his flock, silently attempting to communicate that they must not endanger their lives for him. His lips move in a continuous, silent, but intense prayer. When they reach the church door, the scared man brutally shoves the priest outside. The sunlight, now blazing, momentarily blind Father Michel after the relative gloom of the church. He blink, trying to orient himself. The street is relatively deserted. A few passers-by stop, observing the scene with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. A veiled woman carrying a shopping bag turns and quickly walks away, clearly unwilling to get involved. An elderly man sitting in front of his stall pull out his phone perhaps to film or call someone but one of the abductors give him such a menacing glare that he hastily pulls the device away. A white van, an old Toyota with dusty, partially illegible license plate, is double parked about 20 meters from the church. ETS engine is already running, spewing black smoke from ETS faulty exhaust pipe. A fourth man, whom no one had noticed before, is at the wheel, his face partially obscured by chips and glass. The scared man shoves Father Michel towards the van. He stumbles over a loose stone on the broken pavement but is caught before he can fall. The scared man violently opens the back door. Get in, he orders. The priest hesitated for a fraction of a second, casting a final glance back at his church, at the community he has served for 15 years. In that brief instant, so many memories flood his mind, the baptism celebrated, the wedding blessed, the sick visited, the children talked. An entire lifetime of service that could end here, now, because of hatred and intolerance. He said, get in. A violent blow to his back propelled him inside. He crashed onto the metallic floor of the van, he saw instinctively trying to cushion the fall. The acrid smell of motor oil and rusted metal invaded his nostril. The three men quickly climbed in after him, slamming the door shut. One of them pulled a dirty rag from his pocket, a rugged piece of canvas smelling of kerosene and sweat. Before Father Michel can react, he ties it around his eyes, so tightly that the fabric dig painfully into the bridge of his nose. So you can't see where we're taking you, the scared man explained with a joyless log. The van roared to life, tears killing on the sun-baked asphalt. Father Michel is violently jostled with every turn, every pothole the driver makes no effort to avoid. H.I.S. abundant, held firmly by one of his captors, tremble uncontrollably. Despite the blindfold, he tried to navigate his surrounding through sounds and sensations. First, the din of urban traffic, horn, engines, the cry of street vendors. Then, gradually, these sounds are replaced by the monotonous roar of the diesel engine and the whistle of wind through the open windows. They drive for what feels like an eternity, but can only be about 20 minutes. The silence inside the van is heavy, broken only by the rugged breathing of the four abductors and his own whispered prayer. Where are you taking me? He finally asks, his voice barely audible. Shut up, the man with the dark beard snapped, accompanying the order with a blow to Father Michel's rib that makes the priest wince in pain. Father Michel falls silent but continues to pray inwardly. He recited the Our Father, the Hail Mary, psalm memorized long ago. The familiar words are encore in this storm of terror, a slender thread connecting him to his face, to his vocation, to everything that has given meaning to his life. The road became rugged. They have left the asphalt for a dirt track. Each bump threw Father Michel against the metallic walls of the van or the unyielding body of his captor. His shoulder, his back, ici s'accumulat bruise. Den, a suddenly a it began, the van slow and stop. The engine is cut. The silence that follow is absolute, almost unnatural. Even the wind seemed to have fallen still. Father Michel Phyllis at beating so fiercely et imagine his captor can hear it. The back door open with a metallic groan. Rogan grab him and pull him out. He stumble, his feet touching on une even surface probably stones and sand. Then, the blindfold is brutally ripped away. The intense midday sun strike him like a physical blow. He instinctively squeeze his eyes shut, then gradually reopen them, struggling to adjust. When his vision finally stabilizes, what he sees makes his blood run cold. He stand on a stone bridge spanning a DRY ravine. It is one of the many bridges built during the British colonial era in the early 20th century, when Sudan was part of the empire. The once imposing structure, a testament to Victorian engineering, is now in deplorable condition. Crack, like dark vin, run along a TSPR. Section of the parapet are missing, leaving dangerous gap. The stone, once light colored, is now blackened by a century of pollution and neglect. The bridge is located on the outskirts of Khartoum, in an abandoned industrial zone. Around them, dilapidated buildings form warehouse or factories stand like concrete skeleton. Not a living soul is visible in any direction. This is the kind of place authority have forgotten, where no one comes unless forced. Father Michel carefully approached the edge and looked down. The ravine is about 15 meters deep. In the rainy season, a tumultuous river, a tributary of the Nile, must flow there. But now, in the heat of August, it is completely DRY. All that remains is sand, jagged rock, and rusty industrial debris discarded over the years. The fall would undoubtedly be fatal. No human being could survive an impact on those rocks from this height. Father Michel Phyllis leg grow weak. Et understand now why they broke him here. This isolated bridge will be his place of execution. Turn around, the scared man order. The priest obeys slowly, turning to face his four abductor. In the harsh sunlight, he can now see them clearly. The scared man, who appeared to be the leader, is about 35. H.I.S. cloth, too simple, are of good quality. This is not a desperate pope, bu someone educated, perhaps even prospero. H.I.S. brown eyes are cold, calculating. The other three are younger, in their 20s. The driver H.I.S. a youthful face that strangely contrasts with the harshness of his action. The man with the dark beard bears a tattoo on his wrist, symbol Father Michel doesn't recognize. The third, the one who pulled out the knife in the church, seems the most nervous, his eyes constantly darting around as fearing the arrival of witness. You know why you are here, the scared man says, not a question but a chilling declaration. Father Michel tried to keep his voice steady. He think he do, but he would like to understand. What have you done to deserve your hatred? He don't even know you. The man stepped closer until their faces are mere centimeters apart. The priest can see the pore of his skin, the minor scar adorning his face, the burning intensity in his eyes. You came to our country with your lies and spit. You claim to want to help, but you corrupt our brethren. You lead them away from their true faith. You are an agent of the West, come to weaken our society from within. Father Michel slowly shook his head. You are completely mistaken. I am no one's agent. I am simply a man who has dedicated his life to serving others. He feeds the hungry without asking their religion. He heals the sick without distinction. He educates children so they can have a better future. Is this what you call corruption? Lies, interject the man with the dark beard. You convert people. You turn them away from their family, from their tradition. You have never forced anyone to convert, Father Michel replied calmly. Those who come to me do so of their own free will, and he do not separate them from their family. On the contrary, he try to strengthen family ties, to teach love and respect. The scared man gave a bitter log. Love, respect? You speak of value you don't even understand. You come from a decadent country, without morality, and you cling to teach us how to live. The priest feel anger rising within him, a rare emotion et HAS learned to control over the years. But now, faced with such blatant injustice, with this baseless accusation, it is difficult to remain calm. My country has its problem, it is true, like all countries. But he did not come here to impose French or Western culture. He came to share universal love, that which transcends borders, race, religion. A love that embrace all human beings as brothers and sisters. Anti-word the scared man says, looking away. You've had your time to speak. Now, you will pay for your crime against our community. The four men form a semicircle around the priest, slowly pushing him towards the edge of the bridge. Father Michel retreat, he is now touching the uneven stone coping. He glance briefly behind him at the gaping void, at the rock awaiting him 15 meters below. HIS mind race. Disordered thoughts swirl, the fear of death, the regret of not seeing his family again, the sadness of leaving his community orphaned. But amid this mental chaos, a profound clarity pierces through. He does not want to die with hatred in his heart. Oui, he says, résignissant. Before you do this, he wants you to know something. The scared man hesitates, intrigued despite himself. What? Father Michel takes a deep breath. When he speaks, his voice is astonishingly steady, resonating with profound conviction. He forgive all four of you. He forgive you now, even before you do what you are about to do. He do not know the circumstance of your lives, the pain that have brought you to this point. Perhaps you yourself have been victim of injustice. Perhaps you carry wound he cannot even imagine. He cannot judge your journey, but he can offer you my forgiveness, and he pray that one day you will find peace in your hearts. The silence that followed this word is heavy, charged with an almost palpable tension. The four men seem momentarily destabilized. The young driver look away, unable to meet the priestess' eyes. The man with the dark beard clenches his jaw, his fist tightening. Even the scared man appears troubled, a shadow of doom briefly crossing his hardened face. But this moment of wavering lasts only a few seconds. The scared man shakes his head as if to dislodge an unwelcome thought. HIS face ardent again, and with a cry of rage that seemed directed as much against himself as against the priest, he lunged forward. Enough. Échauffe Father Michel violently. The priest stumbled backward, his arms flailing instinctively, desperately searching for something, anything to grasp. HIS finge find only anti-air, and a false. What thoughts flood your mind at this precipice? Share your feeling in the comments below. Time seemed to freeze. Father Michel feel his body plummet into the void, the wind violently whipping his face. HIS arms flail instinctively, desperately reaching for something, anything to cling to. The blue sky above him became a disordered swirl. In this suspended moment between life and death, his mind achieved a surprising clarity. Image flash before him, his ordination in Lyon, his arrival in Sudan full of hope, the face of the hundred of people he had helped. Instead of screaming, a prayer of gratitude rises from his heart. Thank you, Lord, for this life. If this is my hour, I accept your will. 3 metés, 4 metés, 5 metés. And suddenly, the inexplicable happen. The air around him change texture, becoming dense, almost palpable. HIS fatal fall begin to slow down, impossibly. It's as if un sin en grasp him with infinite gentleness, guiding him downward rather than letting him drop. On the bridge, the four abductors watch, petrified with horror. The scared man clutches the parapet, his eyes wide with disbelief. It's impossible, the young driver whisper, his voice trembling. Father Michel now descend as if sliding along an invisible slope. HIS cloth floats strangely, rippling as if in water. 7 metés, 10 metés, 12 metés. HIS speed continue to decrease, defying all physical logic. In this suspended moment, he feel a presence not something visible, but a real as the air breath. A presence of unconditional love, of absolute protection. Tears stream down his cheek, carried away by the wind. You are there, et murmure. You have always been there. 15 meute. HIS fit finally touch the sandy ground with impossible softness. HIS leg flex slightly, absorbing what should have been a deadly impact buis merely a gentle shock. Et remain standing, completely unarmed. The silence that follow is absolute. Father Michel looked down at his body, expecting to find wound. But no, he's trembling and palpate his torso, his arms, his leg. Not a scratch, not a pain. HIS leg give way. He falls to his knees in the sand, pressing his forehead to the ground, and weeps. These are sobs that shake his entire body, a mixture of retrospective fear, overwhelming relief, and a gratitude so intense it hash. If this astonishing survival HIS moved you, please give this video a like. Your support is precious. On the bridge, the abductor recoiled from the edge, their face expressing a visceral terror. The scared man trembled violently, staring at his hands if they were stained with invisible blood. What have we done? He whispered, his voice broken. It was a sign from God. We tried to kill an innocent man. The young driver falls to his knees, sobbing. The man with the dark beard retreats towards the van. Let's go, we must leave now. But the scared man hesitates, looking towards the ravine. We cannot leave him to die there. We already tried to kill him, and something saved him. If we let him die now. He climbed into their van. But instead of fleeing, the scared man, who is trembling on, pulled out his phone and dialed a number. At the church, Amira HIS mobilized the community. Her brother Youssef, a former military man, organized research teams. They question passers-by, following lead about the white van. Amira's phone rings on unknown number. A masculine voice, tense, almost broken. The priest, is alive. Jabra Bridge, North Industrial Zone. Ravine under the bridge. Come quickly. The three vehicles converge on the bridge, driving as fast as possible. 25 minutes of a frantic race through Khartoum. When they arrive, the van is gone. But below, in the ravine, a silhouette in a black cassock sit on a rock. Père Michel. Amira cry out. The priest raised his head. Even from a distance, she can see the tear tracks on his dusty face. But he is alive, miraculously alive. Youssef and two men cautiously descend the steep embankment. When Youssef reaches the priest, he quickly examines his body. Father, are you injured? Father Michel looked up at him, his eyes filled with wonder. I am well, Youssef. They pushed me from the bridge, but he did not fall. He was carried, held, protected. Youssef stared at the bridge 15 meters above. HIS military experience tell him no human being should survive such a fall. Yet, the priest doesn't even have a scratch? It's impossible, he murmure. No, Father Michel replied with a peaceful smile. But I am here. We are witness to the impossible. Youssef helped him ascend. When he emerged at bridge level, Amira rushed forward and embraced him, weeping with relief. We thought we had lost you. Me too, he says softly. But we have all witnessed something extraordinary today. Despite his protest, Father Michel is taken to Khartoum University Hospital. Dr. Khalida Hassan, Chief of Emergency Service, oversees a battery of exhaustive tests, X-ray, a brain scan, blood analysis. Nothing is left to chance. Meanwhile, the news spread like wildfire through the city. Social media explode, photo of the bridge circulate. Video show the priest walking unsupported in the hospital. Théorie multiplie, hoax, divine intervention, en unexplained phenomenon. At 6 heures du soir, Dr. Hassan convenis medical team. The result of all tests are spread across the table. I have practiced medicine for 32 years and says in a grave voice, but today, I am confronted with something I cannot explain. This man fell 15 meters onto rocky ground. He should be dead or gravely injured. He remove his glass, rubbing his eyes. But all our examination showed that he has absolutely nothing. note à bruise, note à fracture, no concussion. HIS organ are perfectly intact. It is medically inexplicable. Docteur Fatima Osman, a traumatology specialist, speak up. Perhaps we are facing something that transcends our current scientific understanding. Something physics cannot yet measure. Docteur Hassan signe the discharge certificate at 8h du soir. A crowd HAS gathered outside the hospital, parishionné, journaliste, curieux onlooker. When Father Michel appear, applause erupt. Question barrage him from all side. Erez attiré d'and, requesting silence. Yaem not à saint. Yaem just a man who tried to serve. What happened, I do not claim to fully understand. But perhaps the message is not that Yaem special, but that every life is precious, that no one is ever truly alone. Spread this astonishing story with everyone you know. The days that follow transform Khartoum. The story of the miracled priest captivates the world, but what is even more remarkable are the local transformation. 1 week after the incident, a timid knock sounds at the church office door. Father Michel look up. HIS had skip a bit. It's the scared man, Aed Mansour, the very man who pushed him. Aed stand in the doorway, his face etched with obvious suffering. HIS eyes are red rimmed. He don't know why he came and confess, his voice raw. He should be in prison for what he did. Father Michel rises and extends his hand. You are welcome here. Aed falls to his knees, a tranching sob shaking his body. I am so sorry. Atred consumed my heart. When he saw you survive, he understood how wrong he had been. Father Michel knelt beside him and placed a hand on his shoulder. He forgave you before you even pushed me, he says softly. You are forgiven. What matters now is what you will do with this second chance. This scene marks the beginning of a remarkable transformation. Aed Mansour become a regular visitor, not to convert, but to learn, to understand, to heal. Muslims begin to participate in the parish's charitable program. Family of different faith gate for community project. One September evening, Father Michel observe a mixed group preparing food parcel. You see, he says to Amira, a gentle smile gracing his lips, this is the true miracle, not my survival, but the fact that people who once mistrusted each other now work together, log together, help one another. Et continue his work with the same humility, politely refusing interview from major media outlet. In late September, as the sun set over Khartoum, he stand on the step of his church. Aed arrive, I does every evening, to help and to talk. Good evening, Father Michel. Would you like to walk? I have many questions tonight. Of course. I always have time for sincere questions. They walk together into the darkening streets, a Catholic priest and a Muslim man who once tried to kill him, now bound by an experience that has transformed them forever. Father Michel's story remains us that even in the face of violence and hatred, something greater can intervenir. But the true miracle was not his impossible survival, it was the transformation of hearts that followed. Aed, from potential murderer to seeker of peace, the community, from divided to united. Father Michel continued to live simply, insisting he is merely an ordinary servant who had an extraordinary experience. And in the streets of Khartoum, a seed of hope has been planted, a seed that whisper reconciliation is possible, that forgiveness transform even desperate situation, and that authentic love build bridge where there seemed to be only abyss. The message isn't to wait for miracle to change the world. It is that each of us, in our own way, can be instrument of transformation. Every act of kindness, every gesture of forgiveness, every effort of understanding contribute to having a better world. For the greatest miracle is not defying physical gravity, but defying the gravity of hatred, rising above vengeance, choosing love when everything pushes us toward fear. And that, dear viewer, is something each of us can accomplish every single day, if we only chose to. If this story inspire you, subscribe, like, and share. And tell us, what lesson does Father Michel's journey impart to you? Let us know in the comments below.